Hi there. Welcome to another presentation of the Sound Healing Conference. Today we have Randy Masters. Hi, Randy.
Hey, David. All right.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so
Let me
much.
read your bio here. Randy Masters, PhD, has degrees in music, film, and divinity. He's been teaching sound healing, music, and sacred geometry for over 30 years. He's been teaching continuously since 1968, including 17 years in major universities. He's composed music for feature movies and has several albums with his former internationally recognized group Solar Plexus, as well as recording with Hedzola Sounds from Ghana, West Africa, Lou Harrison, and other luminaries. His company, Resonant Living, has been making custom tuning forks and wind chimes for over 30 years, as well as sacred geometry jewelry. Randy also teaches gemstone balancing classes, and he's taught sound healing for the Globe Institute for over 30 years now. He's a sought out after expert in harmonic design and sacred numbers, and has received many awards in music from ASCAP and from NEA. Welcome, welcome. So what have you
Yeah.
been up to lately?
Well, I've been absorbed in the numbers for tonight. It got me going so much. It kept me awake a lot of the night. I mean, like I said, I don't count sheep, but I got numbers going because they're activating. So my even just thinking about it and not saying anything out loud, the numbers are doing things in my own system. They're creating sound effects, you might say, throughout my body. Just
Mm-hmm.
thinking different as thoughts. All thoughts have resonant number values. Just thinking a thought will have a certain vibration, and that vibration will have a number. So when I start doing classes like this, a lot of times I have so many things going through. I'm sure it's a different kind of dream world, I'll tell you.
Uh-huh. It's interesting. It's like, you know, I always found one thing interesting that it's the brain remembers the basic numbers better than anything. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
If I have to remember how many things I need to do, I can remember the number of things I need to do, but I can't remember them.
yeah, it's fun, huh?
Right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got
It's,
to do a sacred number of things every day.
right,
And may
right,
have
right.
to add or subtract a little bit to dial it in.
Uh-huh.
That makes a
Cool.
that makes a big difference. Well, that's what it's
Okay.
all about. Constant resonance throughout the unified field. And that's the
Mhm.
kind of thing I'm into talking about that.
Cool. Well, before we do that, I want to ask you the big question. I forgot to prepare you, so you can take a little second to think about it if you like. And that is, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do to help people on the planet?
Well, I would design certain technologies that would be available to people to work with for harmonic things using light and sound and color and shapes. I could build structures that are completely 100% tuned, harmonically tuned. So every number in the construction is harmonic, things of that nature. I would certainly produce a lot of recordings where I would take this information and get different kinds of sound recordings and train musicians who don't know how to do this, but they're amazing musicians. I need to train them in some things. So I could
Uh-huh.
create that sound with the level of excellence as musicians, and then write books and make them available for people. Have time to write the books without all my to-do list. You know,
Hmm. Uh-huh.
I mean, those are a
So,
few things. I mean that's fine the first week, and then I'd see what to do the next week.
right, right, right.
you
Out of
know.
the technology, out of all the technologies you have in mind, what do you think would help the people the most?
Well, I think things that can. Well, you see, there's some technologies that exist that the public doesn't have.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, that are regenerate organs, and there's
Uh-huh.
technologies for regrowing limbs and teeth and
Mm-hmm.
eyesight, all of those kind of things, and to be able to safely make things available
Mm-hmm.
so people won't have suffering. And then there's other projects for that I have information on, like desalinating salt water sonically and neutralizing radiation, cleaning up plastic using sound frequencies that are in the ocean, all the way down to the ocean floor. There's
Mm-hmm.
all of this kind of stuff. And the things that are really working have a harmonic background behind it, which is my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just a stuff. It's tuned stuff, and tuned
Cool.
with intent and also tuned with numbers. So I just love working with that. And on buildings that are being designed, I work with architects, and I give them extra special numbers to put into their designs so that the door functions as a door, but it's not just a door. It's a harmonically proportioned door that even if you don't walk through it, you just look at the door and it has an effect on you.
We've even, I've worked with you a lot on the sound chambers that we've been working on as well, with the
Yeah,
King's Chamber, with the dodecahedron around it, octahedron around that. It's
yeah.
been really helpful, all the information you've helped with on that. It's been amazing.
Well, it's fine tuning, and that's the way I feel that creation really, really works. And that's where all these numbers come from, observing stuff all over the cosmos, from the microscope to the telescope, far out and far in,
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
and these resonances and special numbers exist throughout, and that's the way the whole field talks to itself.
uh-huh,
You
cool.
get the numbers right. It's like you're on the right radio station and you're tuning in to something. You miss it, like with FM, you miss it. You miss the whole station just being off a little tiny bit.
So your talk is on balancing energy fields and expanding consciousness with sacred numbers. So, but before we do that, let's actually have you do a meditation to get everybody tuned in and really high and peaceful.
Yeah. All right.
Right? Okay.
So, well, yeah, welcome, surface dwellers. I appreciate you being here. And thank you, David. Yeah, this is a great co-creation. I'm going to give you several techniques you can use to help your day. There's a lot of stress that's going on now, and a lot of need for people to be able to create a protective field. So these are things that I do in workshops, but I'm going to tell you what you can do. And I don't know if you can show the screen here. I can show a geometric form if you can, but it's okay. What I'd like you to visualize first, this is for protection. And this came from a fellow that I greatly admire for his work, Stuart Swerdlow, who was involved in the Montauk Project and has written a lot of books. He's a stellar human being and things that he's done. And what this is called is the ultimate protection device. And you surround yourself visually with a tetrahedron. So it's like a pyramid that has a triangular base and 3 triangular sides. There's different kinds of tetrahedrons, but anyway, that's the basic tetra for 4. And you construct it out of violet light. So just imagine surrounding your body. You can make this as big as you like, and it's all made out of violet light. Then around that, you put a violet light octahedron. So that's like a double pyramid, square base, 4 triangular sides pointing up, 4 triangular faces, or sides pointing down. So that's why octa, 8 for octahedron. And you make a larger octahedron around the tetrahedron, but both are made of violet light, which is awesome for purifying. And then around
So the tetrahedron's like a 3-sided pyramid up,
right.
and a 3-sided pyramid down with a triangle in the middle, which makes a little diamond, kind of.
Well, you've got in the tetrahedron, you have a triangular base, and then off of that going up to 1 apex for now, 3 triangular sides, not a double tetrahedron, but just a single platonic type tetrahedron. But within the octahedron, it's like 2 geese of pyramids, one pointing up and another one mirror image pointing down. So you end up getting.
Oh, so the tetrahedron's just up, not down also.
Yeah, it's just up. There are.
Okay. So like the little 3-sided pyramid inside a big 4-sided diamond in a way.
Yeah, 4 sides up and 4 sides down, like a diamond.
Got it.
Exactly.
Got it. Perfect. Okay,
and that's a shape that navigates space-time. Very important shape that's been used for antennas and things. There's a reason why most of the pyramids are built in the shape that they're built, for a reason. You can build all kinds of different pyramids. And so that's one type to use for that. And so this can last, let's say, 4 days. But I'd recommend, with all the things that people are dealing with today, do this every day. Now, you can also, if you park your car someplace, put this form around your car. If you have children that are out playing, as parents, you have the permission to put this energy field around your children to help protect them from all kinds of things, including thought forms, physical things, and thoughts of other people, all types of microwaves. I mean, things like that. So, and put it around your car when you're driving, so that you're in an exceptional environment. And it's not like other drivers are going to see this. They don't see it, for the
Cool.
most part.
Did you say you have an image of it?
Well, I have an image of the tetra. I have a model in crystal of the tetrahedron and a model of the octahedron, but I haven't had one built yet. Well, which I can do with 3D printing. Yeah, with 3D printing and make a model of this.
So is the octahedron about just a little larger than the tetrahedron?
Yeah, it can be as much larger as you feel. So when I put it around my house, obviously to cover all my property, some of it's going to go to the next door neighbor. It's going to be big, but it won't bother them. There's no going against their free will or creating a disturbance field. I make it big enough. See here with this octahedron. Now this is a fluorite crystal. Okay. And so the number of 8 is like an infinity number. It's one of the Isis numbers, and I'll talk about that.
That's
and what's so interesting about this is that this is not perfect like it was cut in a lapidary studio. I have octahedrons that are cut, but this grew like that. And if you had 1 million of these, every one of them would be slightly different, like we are as individuals, yet it still maintains a shape based on the subatomic lattice and the archetype that holds the shape of an octahedron. So there's some other shapes of fluorite as well, some cube shapes, but basically this fluorite is obeying a command from a higher level to be the shape that it is. And this gets into shape resonance. So my example for that is like if you have a kidney, and you've heard the expression being bent out of shape. Well, see, if kidney is made out of kidney material, and it looks like a kidney bean, and kidney beans also help kidneys as a food. There's all that kind of relationship between the organs and the foods and the shapes. This is harmonics, but harmonics of shape. And now, if the kidney gets too out of shape for various reasons, it can not be healthy. It can still be made of kidney material and kind of look like a kidney, but the idea is it has to maintain a certain shape in order to fulfill its function at certain DNA levels of humans and different animals and things like that. So shape resonance is absolutely a crucial part of this. And then we have the tetrahedron. This is also called the 4 faces of God. And you'll also see these with the symbols YHWH like Yahweh on it, which is not a being, but that's a different story for another day or night. Anyway, so because you can create all the other forms by knowing how to manipulate the tetrahedron. Okay. Now this is a Platonic tetrahedron that's equilateral. Every edge is the same and all the angles are the same. And it often represents the fire element in the mystery. So I had this made out of strawberry quartz to be red. You can take a tetrahedron and put this in your third eye and rotate it different clockwise and counterclockwise, and both going clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously to really empower your pineal gland and pituitary gland. And you can also do it with blue, because blue light is absolutely phenomenal for the pituitary and pineal gland. And you want to balance those in a real fast way. You can see a blue circle kind of and with a blue dot in the middle, and just visualize that blue circle with a blue dot in the middle for a few minutes, and you can really help balance yourself. It's that simple. Those are hyperspace symbols, by the way, because they speak to beyond the third dimension, and they communicate to dimensions beyond. So those dimensions can download here, and it can communicate from here back to those higher dimensions. And there's a lot of stuff done with very specific symbols and why the symbols are the way they are in their shape. So those are the 2 forms for this particular meditation. Now, another technique I'd like you to have, and this technique, you can visualize the numbers. In King Solomon's temple, there's 2 pillars, one called Boaz, B-O-A-Z, which is the female pillar, and one called Jachin, Jachin, which is the male pillar. And the male pillar is a white pillar, and the female pillar is a black pillar. So white is radiating out, which is a male kind of principle, all the colors, and black is absorbing all the colors. So there's no negativity around black here and what that means at all, just so you know. Now, the Kabbalistic number for Boaz is 79, which is, it's a prime number, and it's also an E note musically. 79 hertz is an E note. And the male pillar is the number 729, which is an F sharp, a very important F sharp, by the way, that relates to quantum physics and all kinds of things. I've got a whole paper just on the harmonics of the number 729 itself. And so it's very, very interesting getting into these numbers. So what you do, one of the things you could do, and I use tuning forks for this, and sometimes sound tubes that I've made tuned to these numbers. You can imagine the number and run the female pillar through one side of your body with the number 79, thinking of that. Just thinking of that number is going to create harmonic responses in your body. And then visualize the male pillar, Jachin, with the number 729 going through the other side of your body. Now, depending on how you were born and things that happen, different things happen with the left and right sides of the body and how that relates to the left and right brain and so on. But then what you want to do is mix them, put the female pillar number and color on the other opposite side of the body and put the male pillar on the opposite side. And when you do that, going back and forth, you're balancing the male and female in you, which is very interesting. You're balancing the female that's inside the male, okay, if you can imagine that. And then you're balancing your male aspect that's inside your female aspect. And each person has their own particular balance of how those two work. So the higher number 729 doesn't mean more dominance from the male energy or any, it doesn't have to do with that. It's just a number. And both numbers have the number 7 and 9 in it, which is very, very interesting also about that. So it's incredibly balancing. Now, you can do this technique, imagine that, and you could also imagine the sound coming up from your feet, running through your body, going all the way through your body and going out to the cosmos, and then coming back from the cosmos, running through your body with these numbers as vibrational pulsation going through you. Now, one of the further extension of that is with light. And you breathe in through your crown from out in the cosmos, or how far out you can go. You breathe in a golden light representing the male principle. And there's numbers that go with this too. But right now, just the golden light goes all the way through your body and touches all the cells, but it also touches the spaces between the cells. Because there's actually more information between the cells than in all the information in the cells, in space. It's full. It might seem empty, but it's full. It goes all the way through your body, goes out your feet, and goes down into the center of the earth, and is given as a gift to the earth. Then, and you do that on your inhale. As you're inhaling gold light, and it runs right through the crown, all the way down through the body and out your feet. And then on your exhale, you're absorbing. It's kind of like on your exhale, you're breathing in, but it's a different kind of breathing. But on your exhale, see, you create space where the male energy fills the space. As you do an inhale and you breathe in gold light, you're filling the space. But in the female, you're actually creating space. And so when you exhale, you're creating space. And imagine the black light of the feminine energy coming from the center of the earth up through your body, through your feet, up and out, and goes out your crown and goes out to the cosmos. And it gives a gift through you from the center of the earth to the cosmos. So it's a two-way circuit. It's fantastic to work with that. Another good technique you can use for balancing is to put yourself inside a Vesica Pisces shape. Now you can do, when you overlap two circles of equal diameter, that combine at the halfway point, at the radius, you get the classic Vesica that you start sacred geometry with. Now, one side of that Vesica represents the electrical part, The other side represents the magnetic. And a vesica Pisces is made out of this type of vesica. There's different kinds. This one is made out of 2/3 of the circle. You take 1/3 of a circle away and collapse it back together, and you've got the vesica shape, almond shape, the mandorla type of shape. Now, how I work this with numbers is in sacred geometry. When you do this, the width of the vesica is the radius of the circle equals 1 unit. And the height of the whole vesica is the square root of 3, 1.732, etc. Okay. Now, in the ancient days, instead of the square roots, they had whole number versions of these. And the value they had was 265 divided by 153. 265 is a C sharp note if it were Hertz, and 153 is a D sharp note built on the number.
So you're talking about just the part of where the two circles overlap.
Right. Mm-hmm. Just the part
okay.
where the two, and you'll get this mandorla shape. Do you want me to show you a model of it?
Sure.
Sure. Just a second. I'll grab it. I pull it off the wall.
Cool.
I like teaching at home a lot because I can just pull art and things off the wall.
Okay. Cool.
Right. So this is part of the off the wall teachings. Okay.
So just a little eye in the middle.
Yeah. So that eye in middle looks like a fish, and of course Yeshua, people call him Jesus. That wasn't his name. That's a whole other story. But anyway, that fish shape comes out of the vesica, and I'll tell you a story about this, so you can use these numbers for manifestation. So the width of the vesica would be 153, and the height would be 265. Now that is correct to the first 5 numbers of the square root of 3. In other words, to a 10,000th of an inch if you were making something. And that's about all you mostly need, except for certain kind of things like in space engineering where you go past a 10,000th of an inch. So the ancients used that, and they called it the 153. Now that number, now why do this? Now you can also spin this. And if you rotate it, that vesica is going to look like a football. It cracks me up in football. They're throwing this 3-dimensional spherical vesica Pisces around. And there's also some seeds in certain plants that are a 3-dimensional vesica Pisces, which is very cool as well. But it represents one side electrical and one side magnetic. And those two need, for each person at different times, need a certain balance. So then you can also visualize those numbers. And if you have those numbers recorded or you have tuning forks made to those numbers, you can tone those numbers, but you can also just think of them. You can also write the numbers, because when you write the numbers, you're tracing in space particular shapes, and the shape of the number, by writing it, goes back through your hands and downloads into your nervous system. A little bit different than if you type it like on a computer or a phone or a cell phone or whatever you do. See, that digital way, you're not tracing the number the same way. So this shape, right, this is very important, how this all works. And part of the geometry of the eye is if I invert it this way and put another vesica in there, then you keep rotating, you get this spiral of vesicas. And that's part of the way the geometry of vision in the eye works. Very, very interesting. Now, if you want to now also represent the flower of life, which starts out drawing it like this, I'm going to show you another model. Okay, now this one they call the seed of life, which is 6 circles around one. So there's 7 total circles in 2 dimensions. This is the 2-dimensional version. There's actually 8 spheres when this is in 3 dimensions. Okay, now right in the middle, we see the 6-petaled flower, a little flower. Those are also vesica Pisces. means vessel of the fish, bladder of the fish is what it, or piscis, as some people say. I don't like the sound of piscis. I like to say Vesica Pisces. Almost everybody relates to it that way. Okay. Now there's 6 of those that get created from these overlapping circles forming triangles that are curved. Now the dimensions of this one is the height of this, the little skinny vesicas is 153, which remember that was the width of the other vesica. And the width of these skinny ones is 41. So 41 divided by 153 will give you that ratio, like 0.267, et cetera, like that. So those 3 numbers allow you to create the height and the width of the primary Vesica Pisces that come out of the 2-dimensional flower of life. I've been studying the flower of life since the 80s and mathematics of it and so on. And it's absolutely a stunning study, a decoding mechanism for our matrix, let's say that way. Our whole matrix is tuned into the flower of life, and you can decode things if you know how to decode it. And so that's part of it. Now, here's the interesting thing about that number 153. See, the number matters, and the order of the digits in the number matter too. 153 could be in backwards 351 or 315 or 513 or 531. Those are called anagrams. And each one is different, but it's a manipulation of those 3 numbers. And there'll be 6 total possibilities, 6 anagrams of the number 153. Now, in the story where the being that most people call Jesus, okay, he was talking about teaching the fishermen to fish. So think about this. So he just came out of the resurrection, and here's the fishermen. They come back and they're depressed because they didn't catch any fish. So he tells them what side of the boat to cast their net on. Okay, so the net represents the fabric of space-time. It's not just a fishing net. It acts as a fishing net, and that's only one layer of the story, but it's also the fabric of space-time. So what he was doing in his parable and his story to teach them to fish was teaching them how to fish for where fish are created. So every time they go out to fish, they always come back with fish. And when they did, there were 153 fish in the net. Okay, not 152, that has a different meaning, and not 154, but 153, which, by the way, is the sacred number for Mary Magdalene, the number 153. It's a D sharp note, and it's built on 9 times 17. So those are the couple of the numbers inside it. 3 squared is 9 times the prime number 17 gives you 153. So inside that number are, well, actually 3 other numbers. 3 squared giving you 9. So there's 3s and 9 and 17 all in that. And then you add the 153, 1 plus 5 plus 3, and it adds up to 9. Okay, so that's called root reduction. You reduce any of the numbers that have a finite number of numbers in the big number down to numbers 1 through 9, no 0. No 10 becomes reduced to 1. 11 gets reduced to 2. 33 gets reduced to 6, that type of thing in this form. It's called root reduction or theosophical reduction, okay? So that's important because what numbers reduce to, all the numbers that reduce to a 9 talk to all the other numbers that reduce to a 9, even though they can have different meanings. But there is a unified field hyperspace conversation of 9ness going on, number 9, you know. And so then the next thing, now why were there 153 fish in this net? How important this number is at this point. Because when you cube each one, 1 cubed is 1, and 5 cubed is 125, and 3 cubed is 27. So 1 plus 125 plus 27 is 153. So by applying what they call applying the power of the Trinity, by cubing each number in it, you create the same number and you never run out of fish. Now you can't do that with 152, and you can't do that with 154. You have to do that. There's other numbers that that are regenerative like that. But in this purpose, it all had to do with the 153. So that's very important. Now, a civil engineer recently wrote a book where he went to Egypt and measured every measurement he could in the Great Pyramid, around it, inside, everywhere he could go with modern measuring equipment. I think he probably used lasers and things where you can get some really accurate measurements of things. And the height of the pyramid was 153 times pi, 480 point, 663, 6666, something like that, is what the number would be. That's very interesting in terms of that use. And then he found all through the pyramid in his measurements different multiples of the number 153. So it's a very important regenerative number. Okay, just so you know that. So numbers operate in different ways. Now, another main thing I want you to get from today is to think of and feel numbers not as left brain math. Now, I use my left brain. Hopefully my left brain doesn't use me up. So I use my left brain. So I'm not putting the left brain down. It's a whole brain. So you wonder where certain mathematicians get high and things. So, as a composer, when I'm composing, I'm not putting other sounds on because I got the sounds in my head or wherever in my mind and that I'm composing. But when I do my work with numbers, I'd also rarely ever put any music on because I'm concentrating so I can hear the numbers sing, so I can hear the numbers talk. And I don't want any interference. If I put music on, I start paying attention to things and I can get distracted. Other people might work differently. But the point is I discovered after, maybe 30 to 40 years of doing this work, that the numbers are singing, the numbers are talking. And I'm listening for their conversation to teach me about creation. So I consider that creational harmonics, creational numerology, different than pop numerology. So, and years of doing that type of thing, I've made discoveries because I'm listening to numbers. So now, within that also are two main things that the ancients did. They used numbers for quantity, counting, but they also used the numbers for qualities. And what's been lost a lot in the contemporary world is the understanding of numbers as qualities. And when you examine the sacred sites around the world and their measurements, there are certain numbers built into the sacred sites so that particular qualities are radiating that sacred site and how that sacred site talks to the cosmos and how the cosmos talks to the sacred site. It's a transceiver, transmitting and receiving as we are, transceivers. So that two-way flow needs to not be blocked by something. So the ancients used very, very specific numbers. Now you can have a proportion and blow it up or shrink it and maintain the ratios in that proportion. But if you design it to certain wavelengths, certain exact numbers, those are like antennas tuning into different radio stations. So that's very important. So that 153, just to give you an idea about that. Do I have another little note about that that I want to share with you? No, I think that's the main thing there. Now, here's a couple more numbers you can use that kind of extend our meditation that we started with, and throughout, as I'm talking to, there may be different things that I'll mention, that if you work with these numbers, you're extending the harmonic meditation, meditating on numbers, writing numbers, drawing numbers, visualizing numbers is very important. In fact, for instance, if you want safety in your driving, here's the number that I got from a very famous Russian, Grigory Grabovoy, and his books are stellar. You can get them online, translated from Russian into English, and I studied with his main people too. Grigory Grabovoy. Grigory is Russian for Gregory, and he's a super genius. He's like from another planet with numbers, and he's got the whole human body mapped out in numbers in a different way, so that by doing different visualizations with the numbers and writing them and putting them inside like silver spheres, putting them inside the body, collapsing the numbers. She's got all kinds of techniques. So what do you do with the number? Writing the number and all that type of thing. So the number he has for safety for driving is 11179. 11179. Now, so add that up. What do you get? 111 is a 3. Add that to a 7 and you get a 10, which reduces to a 1. And add that to a 9 gives you another 10 that reduces to a 1. So the reduction of 11179 is a 1 that reduces to unity. Now, when I use that in music, if I wanted to, I could make a tuning fork or a chime or tune a crystal bowl to it or something to 111.79. Now, the number remains the same, but the name of the note is different. If you move the decimal point to the right, you're multiplying by 10, which takes you up 3 octaves in a major third in music, like a C up to an E is a major third. So 3 octaves and a major third. If you divide by 10, you move the decimal to the left and you're going down 3 octaves in a major third. But the number remains the same, and I've changed the horizontal axis by just moving the decimal point. Now, I can't make a tuning fork at 11,179. They don't make ones you could hear it, but mainly they don't make them that high. But I could make it 1117.9, or I could make a weighted tuning fork like 111.79, and I still have the same number. So as a harmonic, when I play it, it's a harmonic prayer going out into the environment. Now you can write this number down and put it around and put it in the car somewhere. You can put it where you can see it. You can put it on the dashboard in some way. You know, you can put the number even somewhere where you don't see it. And you've put that number into the field of the car. Okay. And you can put it in your pocket or in your wallet or purse or something. So when you ride with somebody else, you're bringing the safety in automobiles or trucks or buses or that kind of thing, driving, whatever, with you by carrying that resonance written down somewhere on your body. You can even have it engraved. I can imagine some people, well, there's other things I'd recommend if they were going to use a tattoo that, you know, but there could be people who like a certain number that might tattoo that number on their body, for instance. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying, you know, you can also do things with ink that can be washed off and it's not permanent should you change your mind and so on. There's lots of sacred numbers for doing these type of things, okay? So another way to use some sacred numbers to balance, we need to have this male-female electrical magnetic stuff balanced in us to deal with the changes in the solar system, in our cosmos, our universe. All the high frequencies that are coming here are pushing on people's nervous systems to get with the new program. And that's not always comfortable. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable. But so I use a lot of these numbers as sounds delivered through a tuned instrument of whatever kind, but I also write them. And I also can visualize them. And I can also say the numbers. I can sing the numbers. I can chant the numbers. All of this will help tune your field. So one that you can use for the feminine field in Hebrew is the word Shekinah. Shekinah, Shekinah, different people pronounce it different ways, you know, obviously, whether they know Hebrew or not. And that number is 385. And it's a G note. It's a G note that's built on 5 times 7 times 11, 77 times 5 or whatever. Those are the inner numbers of the inner atoms, let's say, or molecules inside the bigger number. 385 isn't the end of the story, you know. So 3 and 5 is 8, and 8 and 8 is 16, and 1 and 6 is a 7. So 385 reduces to a 7, which is also the number for Athena from the Greek mysteries. Her symbol was a 7-pointed star, where Isis is an 8-pointed star, but Athena is a 7-pointed star. So that the fact that 385 reduces to a 7 answers to that part of that matrix in a certain way. So it's 5 times 11 times, or 5 times 7 times 11 is 3 prime numbers in a row multiplied together, which is also very interesting about that. Now, that's the feminine side. Now, for the male side, there's different ways to balance the male side. One way is Metatron, and Metatron has 2 numbers. Metatron is the active principle of Shekinah. Okay, and that number is 314, which is the first 3 numbers of most values of pi that are used. Start out 3.14, and then they do different things. And there's other values of pi, that are like the Mayans use 3.15. NASA even uses 3.15. Interesting, for different reasons. Traveling in space-time has numbers and harmonics that go with it, by the way. So that's not an accidental aspect. So, and that's an E flat note. So you can take the Metatron number as the active principle of Shekinah and combine that with the 385 Shekinah for the feminine part. And those 2 numbers are balancing that. You can say them, you can write them. Now, on the Ark of the Covenant, as a resonating free energy device, okay, hyperspace plasma energy device, okay, that it really existed. There were 2 angels on top, and people would sit in the middle of those 2 angels, and it would tune them into a field, and they would receive higher communications from hyperspace by sitting on the lid of it between those angels. Now, they had to protect their body because there's certain energies in the ark that are deadly, and you have to know how to protect your body to be able to sit on it. Okay. One of the angels was called Metatron. That doesn't mean that it's a being. That's another story for another time. But again, it's also the active principle. James Hurtak called Metatron the creator of the super electron, which is interesting, like in his Keys of Enoch. Then the other angel, which means bringers of light, is another term of angel, and I'll come back to that, is Sandalphon, Sandalphon, Sandalphon. And Sandalphon resonates with a Kabbalistic number of 930. So it's 93 million miles from the sun to the earth, for instance. So that 93 is important. And it's 3 times 31 to get 93. And 31 is one of the numbers for Elohim, the part of the creative principle. And 3 is the Trinity. So the 0 doesn't really matter in a way. It would in quantity. 930 of something is obviously more of something than 93. But the main quality is the 93, and the internal chemistry in that quality is 3 times 31, which are both prime numbers. And prime numbers can only be divided by themselves in 1. To understand numbers in the whole unified field, you must have a command and understand how to work with prime numbers. They're very unique. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37, etc. Those are all prime numbers, okay? And they have very special meanings. So when a number has a certain prime number in it that a lot of people don't know, like a 385 Shekinah, a lot of people don't know that there's a 5, an 11, and a 7, a trinity of numbers that are multiplied inside to create the 385. So that's very important numerical chemistry. It's part of the alchemy, the numerical alchemy of the number, is to factor it into prime numbers, factoring. And what prime numbers multiplied together give you that number, if you want to really further understand the number. Okay, so you can work with Sandalphon and with Metatron, and you can even imagine yourself with those archangel energies. Now, when I say angels, one definition is bringers of light, but they also bend light. And when you bend light, you get different information. So when sunlight is going through a quartz prism, it bends the light and creates a quartz prism 9 colors, because there's 2 reds, a dark red, a medium red, a dark green, and a lighter green. So there's 9 instead of just 7. When it comes through sunlight through a quartz prism, And there's special mathematics in that. And it's all within an angle they call the rainbow angle, which is basically 42 degrees. And that angle is a special number, also 42, which adds up to a 6. And number 6 represents heaven and earth. So you get that when you see a rainbow, for instance. And in the Great Pyramid, if you make a diagonal of the base, like, and then with one of the edges that goes up to the apex from one of the corners, that angle is called the Aries angle, and that's basically the 42-degree rainbow angle built right into the Great Pyramid as one of the extra mysteries in the pyramid. So that makes a lot of difference. So I say angels, same letters as angles. And so angle, you change the angle, you get a different perspective. You've heard that expression, oh, that's a different angle on that. Well, and look at animals. They change their head, they're tuning. Different insects and mammals will turn their head different ways because they're actually tuning. You know, why do they shift their head to the left on certain things? Why do they shift their head to the right? Same with human beings. If you find the right angle, it's like you're getting in tune to receive different information. And that's very, very important. So that's another use of the numbers. So you can use those to balance yourself there. Another thing about the numbers that I find very, very interesting are numbers that Ibrahim Karim discovered, who's an architect from Egypt. We did on our globe trip to Egypt, we had a special workshop with him. And he invented or rediscovered biogeometry and what are called biosignatures. Signatures of everything, different organs in the body and all that. It's about shape there. But in biogeometry, in what he measures with special pendulums and techniques, are 3 qualities that must be there for most things that are working in temples. Everything he designs, he measures these 3 qualities. So biogeometry and 3, he calls it BG3, okay? And what those 3 qualities are is ultraviolet, which is a spectrum of light where a lot of the angelic realm comes from and comes to us. Not everybody can see. Certain insects and animals can see ultraviolet, but humans aren't not basically tuned to ultraviolet. Violet, yes, but not ultraviolet. The next technique is gold on the spiritual plane, not physical gold, but the resonance of gold on the spiritual plane. There's a lot of stuff with gold. And the third quality are the healing forms of green. There's 2 kinds. There's horizontal and vertical green. And that you want the healing form of green. The opposite of that is a illing. You know, that word, a friend of mine made that up. Something that creates illness, you know, because it's toxic, whatever that is. It's not the healing form of green. So those 3 qualities are what he calls BG3. And he has a series of numbers that he has discovered. It's in his book, Back to a Future for Humankind, or Back to a Future for Mankind, that book. And here are some of those numbers. 16 is the lowest number, and the highest one is 189. 16, which resonates with the 7. So how is that used? You look at a temple, and it has 16 pillars around it. Most likely, the reason it has 16 pillars is because they know that that number of pillars creates the resonance of that BG3 energy that the ancients worked with. The next number is 19. How does that show up? It's the most important single number in the Quran, for instance, is the number 19. Also, in the 2-dimensional flower of life, there's 19 circles. 1 in the middle with 6 around that and 12 around that. So not counting the 6 around the 1, you have the 12 around the 1, like 12 apostles around the Christ figure as the activator. And cell salts work that way. Certain cell salts, they had 12 for years, and then a friend of mine discovered that there was a 13th cell salt. There was lithium and beryllium. And the lithium beryllium cell salt could spin both directions, clockwise or counterclockwise. It was an activator. All the other cell salts only spun in one direction. So it's a 12 plus 1 system, as with King Arthur. The 12 and 12ness, 12 around 1, the 1 being the activator. But for the system to work, the 12 also activate the activator. It works both ways. It's not like just a bunch of students around a teacher. Each one of those, they could be prophets or they could be knights in the round table, is a pattern of 12 plus 1 pattern. It's very, very important. So that 19 then, that's one place. 28, the next number, the 28 days of neonatal cycles. There's a lot of other meanings of 28, but there's a reason for that. And a lot of the months in the 364 day calendar version, you have months that are 28 days, and there's 13 of them of the lunar months, and you get 364, not 365 or 0.242. You don't have that. The next number, 34, is an octave of 17. It's a Fibonacci number, and that's a C sharp. There's a lot of things that resonate with 34. Then the next number is 43, which is 34 turned around, and that's a prime number. 19 was a prime number. Now then 54, which is a lower octave of like 432. It's an A one. Then the next number, 68. In this list, only 2 numbers were in octaves, 34 and 68. Then 71, which is a D. 68 is a C sharp. So what I'm doing is I'm giving a musical note name to a number. If it was 68 miles, I could say, 68 miles is a certain length, and that'll reduce us to another number. But the number 68, if I'm thinking of it in terms of music, what is 68 hertz or cycles per second? Well, that's a C sharp. Okay, so what I've done through all my years of study, which has given me certain unique understandings in physics and other things, is I've reduced it all to musical understandings, which is very, very interesting. Then 83, that's another prime number. Then 91. Then 104, which is basically an A flat note, a multiple of 13. 115, which is an A sharp, and that has prime number 23 in it. Then 123, that's a B note that has 41 in it. And what I say earlier, 41 was a prime number that I was using for the skinny vesicas in the flower of life, which is interesting. Then 132, it's a C11, and it's a multiple of 33, and it's a lower octave of that famous number 528. And I can say more about that number, 528. You'd reduce it to 264, half of that, which is one of the key measurements in Stonehenge, for instance. Then take it down to 66, which is the sacred number for Thoth or Tahuti from Egypt. One of his numbers was 66. Then you go down half of that to 33, the master number. And there's a lot of things that relate to the master number 33. The next one is 144. And the sacred cubit in Egypt resonated to 144 megahertz or 144 million hertz. So take away the zeros in the million hertz and you reduce it down to a 144, that could reduce to a 9, but that's an example of where the 144 is being used times a million from this grid of BG3 numbers by the ancient Egyptians as megahertz, not the length of the cubit, but converting it to sound, what the sound of that length of that cubit or measuring device is. Okay. The next number is 156. It's an E flat. Then the next number, 177, is an F sharp that has prime 59 in it. I'm just saying that, so you don't have to write all this down because you're hearing it from me. And hearing it from me, I'm planting the seeds of this into your consciousness. I'm doing a download, and don't worry about trying to keep up with it. You can listen to this again, you can write it down, you can take notes, but I'm saying it as a transmission for the possibility that it could contribute to you in some way as a type of resonance transmission because of the sacred meanings behind it. So the lost cubit, they called it, resonated to 177 megahertz. Very interesting. And then 163, which is a prime number, And that's an E note. And then the last number, 189, which is a G note, you multiply it by 4 and you get 756, which is one of the lengths of the Great Pyramid in feet, 756 feet. Depends on where you measure from. So in a certain place that you measure in the base of the Great Pyramid, you'll get 756 feet. And then, so I just went through all the BG3 numbers that he had discovered. Now, what do they do with them? Well, I made tuning forks for him to play with the music in it, but he's finding that these numbers existing in measurements, in weights, things like that. So the number that represents a quality can be hertz in sound, megahertz in sound, for instance, kilohertz, whatever. It can be inches, feet, centimeters, miles, pounds. The number 91.125, which is a lower octave of 729, which I said was that pillar from King Solomon's temple. And it has to do with speed of light also. But that particular number was the weight of, from in the ancient days, for measuring gold and silver, they called it the kedet, Q-U-E-D-E-T. And that kedet was 91.125. Very, very interesting. And I've done a whole paper that's not out publicly yet on how that number relates to the speed of light. See, if you take 432 and you square it, multiply it by itself, you get 186,624 as a theoretical value for the speed of light, okay? Which isn't a constant, by the way, and that's another story. But you take that number and divide it down by octaves, and the number is 729. And then take that down by a bunch of octaves, and you get 71.125. It's a very important number. It's a very important number in decoding the harmonics of the hydrogen, which I've worked extensively on for years. The whole Great Pyramid worked with hydrogen, and they manipulated water, and they knew how to separate oxygen and hydrogen and create power. And so hydrogen element is a very important thing to study. And then, okay, so what's something else I could say? What about hydrogen? Give me a number. Well, up until somewhere in the 20th century, the atomic weight of hydrogen was 1.008. And that is in this group of numbers I call the ISIS numbers. Okay, it's 126 divided by 125 will give you 1.008. And I like that one, not the current value, 1.0079, whatever. I think I'm not confident that that current number is really what was intended in the creation of hydrogen. See, when Besant and Leadbetter, the two theosophists, looked into clairvoyantly into the periodic table and into hydrogen, they found that there were 8, they called ultimate physical particles. 18 of them, not 8, 18 of them. So that number 18 is very, very interesting in the whole periodic table. You can take all the atomic weights, multiply them by 18, and you'll get another number. Sometimes you get a choice of 2 numbers that will produce that decimal value that they list in the periodic table. So that, and one of the cubits that the ancients built was 18 inches, British inches, modern inches, not 18, just ancient inches. So all over France and in the south of France, all those temples dedicated to Mary Magdalene and the Cathars and the whole mysteries there in the south of France, in Rennes-le-Château and all, the 18-inch cubit was used as a very specific length. And so when you build buildings and your measuring unit is an 18-inch cubit, which is the height of the average, most chairs are 18 inches, by the way, today. So that number 18 plays out. And that number 18 is called the active principle of Isis, which is in Egyptian is Auset, A-U-S-E-T, not Isis. Isis is the Greek word. But you're traveling in Egypt, just about everybody just says Isis because that's what they know. They don't say Auset. and the bell went off. All right. Now with Isis, the number 8 represents the body of Isis. Okay, so we're talking about the creatrix matrix, and Isis as a great genetic creator. Okay, out of the realms of creation. Okay, the active principle of Isis is the number 18. So then the way these numbers work is anagrams. So 80 is an Isis number, 800, 8,000, multiples of just by adding zeros and multiplying by 10. 0.8 would be, for instance, etc. 18, the active principle, you have a lot of different possibilities. You have 18, add a 0, you got 180, half the circle, for instance. You know, certain angles in the faces of Platon and triangles, adding up to 180 degrees in triangles. Then you have 1080, which would be the average diameter of the moon. You have 801, the alpha and the omega in Greek. 1 for alpha, 800 for omega. So 801 is the alpha and the omega all in one number. And another one for 801 is the dove, which is associated with Mary Magdalene, and that has to do with light language. The dove was symbol of language of the birds, which meant light language and higher matrix of thought, higher realm of information that came through. Okay, then you get 1008, which I just talked about in terms of the 1.008 being that atomic weight, the earlier value of the atomic weight of hydrogen. And I believe that's what it is, because the 18, it answers a lot of the hydrogen dynamics. And it just keeps on going. However, you put the Earth on top of the, you put the moon sitting on top of the Earth, and you're going to get 2,160 mile diameter average for the moon added with the 7,920, and the answer is 10,080, 10080. There's hydrogen number with a 0 on the end of it again. So there's that Isis number. Now that's the average in the of the moon, but that's a very important number. You divide that by 2, and you get 5040, 5040. That was Plato's favorite number, 5040, and for a lot of reasons. And it's called 7 factorial in math, which means 7 times all the numbers leading up to 7. 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. You do that, and you get 5040, which is very, very interesting. Let's see what else I want to say about that. You break it down, and the number is 315 as the lowest number. And like I said, that was the number for one of the values of pi that NASA uses. And also the Mayans used 3.15 in a lot of their calculations for a value for pi. Okay, so you can reduce it. Now, there's 2 axes with numbers harmonically. The horizontal axis, the way I've organized the unified field numerically, is just moving the decimal, multiplying by 10 or dividing by 10. And you're just moving, you're adding zeros, you're taking zeros away, and you're adding decimal points, and zeros before numbers, all that stuff. That's the horizontal plane. The number looks the same. 1.008 looks the same as 10080, like the moon and the Earth put together, okay? And then the vertical axis is multiplying by 2, octavizing up, or dividing by 2, octavizing down. So if you take 1080 for the radius of the moon, double it, you get 2,160. Well, 2,160 is the same musical note, but the number is different. You're not using 1 and 8 and 2 zeros. You're using a 2, a 1, a 6, and a 0. And that has different meanings. Take the 0 off 2,160, and you get 216, which they found honeybees as one of the frequencies of honeybees, which is very interesting, because Rosalind Chapel in Scotland resonates to a 432A. The whole temple's built. And they, right above the altar, they have bees' nests, and the bees will drip honey right down onto the altar. So they understood about bees, and they did in Crete and Greece and ancient Egypt knew a lot about bees and about honey and the different bee products, which is also very, very interesting. And of course, they study bees because aerodynamically they shouldn't be flying according to aeronautical engineers. And they go, what's going on? So what the bees use is a certain flapping of their wings to create a field around their body that changes the effect of gravity, and they fly in that field. Very intelligent.
Also, 216 is an A, right?
Yeah, A, and we call it, yeah, it's an A.
Right,
note.
so they should be called A's, not B's.
I know. I thought, yeah, the B that goes with that could be 480 or 486 or whatever. I know, that's so funny. Wouldn't it be funny if it was a B note? I mean, and there are B notes. There's the sound of the cosmic background frequency actually is basically a B note. It's I've got it written down for you here. It's 4080, and then with another 6 zeros after that. 4,080 million hertz, okay? And you divide it down a whole bunch of times by 2, and you get 972.747, etc., which basically 972 is a B note. Twice, it's a very important hydrogen frequency as well, by the way. But that's the frequency of the background radiation, the cosmic background radiation. The name of the note is G with 5 sharp signs after it. I mean, no musicians work with 5 sharp signs, triple sharps is the most they ever get, and then the number 17 is built into that, and then a little plus sign after that. Very, very interesting how all of that works. Again, number 17 showing up a bunch of times. And so you could take that number and multiply it by 34 or by 68, which are 2 of the BG3 numbers, and that figures into that cosmic background radiation. So that is a value for an ohm, a B. I mean, it wouldn't be a trip if the Bs were doing some frequency. It would be somewhere around 243, etc. for that. How we doing, David?
Good. Where does cosmic background radiation come from?
Throughout all of space, that's the frequency of the radiation of cosmic energy, the fundamental.
So kind of like all the stars and everything just together.
So it's omnipresent. See, omnipresent, but really. And that would be a very good note for ohms to be, because we would be toning that note in some octave that's comfortable in harmony with the background radiation. We would be if we do an ohm to that, we're vibrating to the cosmic background radiation.
And that one obviously probably affects us as much as anything. I mean, even as much as the Schumann resonance or
Oh, absolutely. This is even Schumann resonance is on Earth, but the Schumann resonance isn't for Mars and the moon. Mm-hmm. So, as part of the problem people have going to places like that is they have to kind of get with the program, and they have to get with the resonance of the location. Mm-hmm. And humans are not trained to be in that resonance. They have to be if they want to be able to be healthy and be on the moon or be on Mars or somewhere else. Now, they have to get with its Schumann resonance that has to do with its spin and its atmosphere. So there's a lot of other potential notes for the ohm. And I'll show you how I use the number ohm in a different way. Another background radiation measurement is 7.23 centimeters, okay, which is basically 2.85 inches. And 2.85 is one of the expanded solfeggio frequencies, by the way. So I'm holding up a device that I designed for the Spring Life company, polarizers that are full of minerals. These minerals absorb the cosmic background radiation energies and radiate it out. It's a transceiver. So when I designed this particular one, the width is the 7.23 centimeters. I actually have a bigger formula, but for the first three notes. And then the length is 1.62, which is a certain value of phi. 81 divided by 50 is 1.62, not 1.618, but they all round up to 1.62. And that one talks to the element of hydrogen. And it's a very important number. And 81 is, and 50, both the numbers in the ratio themselves have value. Cat per frequencies are octaves of 25, 50, 100, 200, and 25, half of 50 is the mitochondria, resonant frequency of mitochondria. In 81, it's got all kinds of meanings. You add up the three main magnetics in the periodic table, nickel, iron, and cobalt, and their atomic numbers come to 81. And it goes on, 9 squared, 3 cubed, 3 to the fourth power. So I multiplied that wavelength of the cosmic background times that golden mean ratio to create a golden rectangle tuned to the cosmic background radiation. See, and then the width, I have another formula for the width. Everything on this is tuned. It's called a tuned resonant cavity. Well, all I'm doing is applying the same thing as the ancient architects that built the ancient temples and built all the rooms in the really well-built rooms in Egypt, all the pyramids of Giza, and different rooms in different temples that are all tuned. So they're tuned resonant cavities. You go into a room, not even making a sound, and the vibration of the room will create certain frequencies. They measured more sacred sites in the world, and the two frequencies that they found most that are the room resonates to are 111 hertz, which is a cell rejuvenation, 3 times 37, which are the two most common numbers in the Bible, the number 3 and the number 37, and also 110 hertz, which is 1/4 of 440. 440 has a lot of meanings. That's not a bad number. There's a lot of internet noise about that, but it's not a bad number. And there's 440 of a certain cubit in the base length of the Great Pyramid. If that were a bad number, they certainly wouldn't be using it on that level. 44 is a number for dragon energy, and that's very important. I don't mean like negative reptilian stuff like out of comic books or any of that kind of thing. I'm talking about a beneficial energy of dragon energy and dragon lines that are here on the earth, energy lines, as well as beings. That gets into something that sounds like mythology that actually isn't. But again, that's another story too. A lot of these things are different rabbit holes to go down, but I'm just showing you some of these numbers and how important they are. And 44 is one of the frequencies of the water molecule, 44 and 66. 44 is an F, a double multiple of 11, and 66 is 6 times 11, all part of the double number series 11 through 99. Very, very important numbering series, as is the triple number series 111 through 999. And then you have 1111, which is 11 times 101, 2 different prime numbers. And we're getting those codes, see, now, thanks to digital watches and digital clocks, people are looking at these numbers flashing. They wake up in the middle of the night and their clock is going 1111, or it's going 444 or 333 or 555, 222, you see, things like that. And they keep seeing these numbers over and over and over. And this is part of an activation of our deeper consciousness through these numbers in the field showing up to us. People didn't talk about it like that before the digital clocks. Once that happened, here's the number flashing, right? And they see it on license plates. It gets very, very interesting what that is. In fact, 1111 is a C sharp note, by the way, if you want to make music with that. So I give musical note names to all the numbers I study so that I can understand any number from a musical point of view. Now, here's something trippy too. In the tetrahedron that I showed you, like this, the ratio of the height of a face to the height of the tetrahedron relative to the edge, there's an angle in there, and it's 19.47, etc., 0.4712, etc., degrees. And that, when you put this in the Earth, it's 19.47 degrees below the equator, and you flip it over, and it's 19.47, etc., degrees above the equator. That's the ring of fire where most of the volcanoes are. Very important things align. Now, you take that number, 19.4712, let's take it that far, multiply it by 10, and you have the sound frequency of the sidereal Earth day. Not the 24-hour day. The sidereal day is 23 hours, 56 minutes, 4.091 seconds. So you can convert that through a little math into a sound frequency, and you'll get 194.712, the first 6 numbers of the angle in the tetrahedron, the building block of creation. Now that's how the harmony works. See, on one level, 19.4712, etc., is an angle. On another level, I multiplied it by 10, and I'm calling it hertz. It's the same number, and I just moved the decimal point. Now, if I had octavized it, you wouldn't see it as the same number. You might not even recognize it. But by just moving the decimal, I keep the integrity of the number. Very, very interesting. Let me give you another something that will support you with numbers. A lot of people are having challenges with vision these days, you know. So I get this from Grigory Grabovoi, and this is from his book called Introduction to the Methods of Grigory Grabovoi. And you can find it online and look under SVET, S-V-E-T. They're out of Germany. So the number I would want you to use that he has is 1891014. 1891014. Now, if I want to make a tuning fork with that, I could make it 1891.014 and still have the same number, or I could make it 189.1014 and keep the integrity of the number. Because in these numbers, it's the total number of numbers within the number. In this case, there's 7 numbers that make up the composite of this big number. Then there's the order of the numbers. If I take this number and I change the order of any one of those numbers, I've changed the meaning and the cosmic resonance of the number, which Grabovoi is unbelievable. He has the entire human body, all the nerves, all the muscles, everything, all mapped out with the numbers for doing healing work with numbers. Okay, so what you do, the first variation for how to do this is you mentally place this number sequence, which regulates vision in different eye diseases, into a small sphere. Normally, he uses spheres that are silver. And then you compress that sphere down to the size of a tennis ball and place that in your head mentally. You're placing the number inside a sphere about the size of a tennis ball, and you place that mentally inside your head. You take off your glasses and picture the sphere emitting beams of silvery white light, like a floodlight shining out of each eye. Silvery white light, like a floodlight, coming out of this silvery white sphere, flooding out through your eyes. Now Grabovoi has done stuff where people have grown teeth, new teeth, and limbs, documented. He's got maybe 6 pages of awards in Russia. He's like unbelievable, like a Tesla type of being. Then another version is, well, I'll just give you that one particular one, you know, for today, because that's a very, very important.
Cool.
For vision.
Starting to get close to running out of time here.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I mean, we could go on forever as I do. I spent about 40 years, I still haven't run out. You know, it's still going. But the idea that I want you all to be able to know, you can resonate with numbers, you can think numbers, you can sing numbers, you can chant numbers, you can write them down. You can paste them on things. You can write it down and put it on something. You can write it on your body if you want to. In fact, he has some techniques where you write numbers on your left wrist or on your solar plexus, as an example. I want you to understand that the units may change: feet, miles, yards, kilometers, hertz, nanometers of light, and it all behaves the same way. I analyze all of my studies of light exactly like I do music, but instead of talking hertz or megahertz or whatever, I'm talking either nanometers or angstroms. Same mathematical relationships in sound to go on. Things like that, like the two reds in the rainbow that you get out of sunlight going through a quartz prism. You multiply the lower value of red by 1/3 pi, and you get the darker value. Very, very interesting. And that's the kind of stuff I've done, looking for how is creation working with these numbers, and sometimes why a certain number. And that gets very deep, again, like into the prime numbers within it. And what does that number talk to? Okay. So this is a musical thing. See, when I'm talking here, if you could condense it, everything I'm saying, it's like a symphony going on. All this stuff of the universe talking in frequencies to each other, or all these musical instruments playing different melodies. And when you even think of different thoughts, you're creating numbers of vibrations in your body that at some point could be measured. We don't hear them, but they are creating these numerical vibrations relative to our thoughts, just from thinking, not even saying it out loud. So the numbers are all over the place. We grow up with it. There's a reason why there's certain numbers, why the gestation period is either 270, 271, 272, or 273 days, 2/3 of a year, basically. Why? Very specific with those numbers. And when you start studying them, they start talking to other things, and pretty soon could be a very loud conversation. It's fascinating. The harmonic organization tuned from let's say a God mind level that's operating musically. That's musically. Before light is sound. Before light is like music. You see?
Cool. So it's
That's
interesting it's so interesting to use numbers in a way to basically turn off the brain,
Yeah.
right? As you were saying,
Yeah.
it's like, we often use it in a linear way to really understand. But by talking about quality, as you mentioned, it's like you just have to feel into everything you're saying, because there's no way the brain could track all these details, right, or remember it, right? And it's not
Yeah.
even
The
the point.
mind can't, but maybe not the brain, but the mind
The
can,
mind, right, right,
can
right,
track.
right.
Yeah.
I got a question. So,
Yeah.
um,
I like your questions, David. Thank you.
so would you say that vibration is more primordial than numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about that, because I've always thought that as well. Because you can take a number and it's a certain energy or vibration, right?
Right. And the number can change as things are breathing, as the temperature changes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, the ideal body temperature is 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the frequency all the time, 24 hours a day in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. It's
Wow.
designed that way with no heaters and no coolers. It's designed to maintain 68. And that was one of the biogeometry numbers from Ibrahim Karim. So that temperature creates the quality of the BG3. 72 degrees is nice.
Wow. Wow.
You might want it to be warmer, but if you want a BG3 temperature in your house, you could set it at 68 degrees, you see. So it's all the vibration, and those vibrations can be measured. And some of them change as temperatures change. For instance, there's things that are flexing, and some of the numbers are very, very important, not only as a measurement of the vibration and what the wave is, but like, for instance, 25,920 years in the journey through the zodiac. That's the ideal number. It's not that every 20 less than 26,000 miles. I mean, years. It changes. So
Cool.
when it changes, the vibration changes for the whole thing.
So I've got a question that's kind of important. That's a common way that we get numbers, and that is by changing the letters to numbers. There seems to be multiple ways to do that. What's the main standard for changing letters to numbers?
Okay, that's really important. I hope we don't run out of time because this is really important.
Yeah, so make it short because we
Okay,
are about to
so
run.
it's called gematria or alphanumerics. Each language
Hmm.
around the world has a different number equivalent for each letter, and so you add them up. Like Hebrew was different than Greek, which is different than English. Now, the main one that for the mysteries for English language is 1 through 9, 1 through 9, 1 through 8, not numbering them 1 through 26,
Uh-huh.
where Z is at 26. In this, what I'm talking about, letter Z is the number 8. So you get several
Oh.
letters that are all the numbers 1 through 8, but the numbers 1 through 9, there's only 2 letters that have that.
So you
So you
take
add them
all
up.
you take I'm sorry, you take all the letters and map them out 1 through 26, and then put 1 through 9 on top, 1 through 9, and then 1 through 8 on top.
Exactly.
And okay, cool.
A through so on, then the
Mhm.
next series of 9, and then finally ending up with Z as an 8.
Mhm.
And then you take any word you want and assign a number for each letter. And then you get the total for the word. Like
Mhm.
that's how I got all these Kabbalistic numbers I'm talking
Cool.
about.
Is that how you get the frequencies of the archangels for the tuning forks that we sell?
Yeah, all done from the Kabbalistic translations. And these numbers have been going on through history for thousands of years. It's not just a modern thing that I'm doing with the Hebrew language to do that. That's Archangel Michael's been 101 throughout. That's his number. That's his Kabbalistic number.
Wow.
And so on. I've got them for everything. I do a lot of study of that. And then I make tuning forks to and chimes to these Kabbalistic numbers. And there's some fascinating stuff. And that's what the ancients do. They translate their sacred manuscripts into numbers.
So this is a big can of worms also that I just want to answer briefly. And so my understanding from the classes is that the solfeggio frequency or numbers actually came from a unusual numerology system, not just doing the 1 through 8 or a traditional changing of letters to numbers. Because a lot of people, first of all, don't realize that the solfeggio numbers or frequencies actually came from numerology, like from Joseph Paleo, not from ancient times, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and I worked with Paleo, and he discovered the first 6 by the prayer to John Beloved. There's 19 verses, and each line will have the first 6, and it repeated throughout the Bible. 396, 417, 520.
Well, but
like that.
It's not just changing the letters to numbers, though. It doesn't need to use like a whole sentence or something.
Yeah, right. Right. So what he did then is he would get, like, if you had 3 words in the first thing, the first word will reduce to a 3, the second word will reduce to a 9, and the third word will reduce to a 6. So the first line read 396.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a whole word reduced, and then that combination and that number pattern, which is in Vortex math, repeated over and over and over for all 19 verses.
That's like bizarre.
Every line 1 was 396.
Yeah.
Every line 2 it's amazing.
Okay, so I have to tell you one thing. That I don't know if I told you this, but I was telling our friend Michael, who's totally tuned in psychic, right? And I said he was talking about this frequency for the trigeminal nerve that includes 852, right? And I said, well, it's a solfeggio frequency, and a lot of people think it's from ancient times, but it's not really. It's really a numerology from Joseph Paleo 30 years or 40 years ago, right? And he said, well, let me check in on it. And Michael goes, whoa, 852 created the universe.
Well,
I'm like, a little more ancient than I thought, right?
Yeah, well, it's a very important number. And, these are in these ancient manuscripts from back when they were written, this number pattern. And it works in different languages. I worked with Paleo on this alphanumerics in 6 languages. And we took all of the herbs, the cell salts, all these different kinds of remedies and the name of those remedies in 6 languages and did the alphanumerics on them. Then we reduced them all to the numbers 1 through 9. So the word cancer in English is 26 and it reduces to an 8. So now we have this library, kind of like the Vatican Library. There's 9 drawers. In drawer number 8 are all the diseases that were reduced to the name of the diseases that reduced to an 8. And also in that drawer are all the herbs that have been used to help people with cancer that also reduced to an 8.
Wow.
Eightness is in drawer number 8.
That's just bizarre.
No, we're not publishing that. We didn't. He passed away, but I worked with Paleo deeply for years as soon as he made his discoveries and expanded that work. And
I'm sorry, let's do one last thing. So you came up with some other solfeggio. Actually, you and our other instructor, Judy Cole, simultaneously came up with the other solfeggio frequencies. Tell us about that.
I got the book, Healing Codes for the Biological Apocalypse by Leonard Horowitz. It was really Joseph Paleo's work. And he talks about these numbers, okay? So I started saying, I got to look into this. And I noticed that you could make anagrams of them. The first 6 solfeggios formed 3 patterns. And so you would get, for 1, 4, and 7, you get 6 combinations, 2, 5, 8, 6, 3, 6, 9, 6. That's 18. So I put them all down. Okay, then Judy, her guide said, write these down. And they give her all 18 numbers, and they call it Zobet, which is in Hebrew means in the house of the Lord, Zobet, and call Randy Masters. She never heard of me. So she tracked me down there. I guess there's about 6 Randy Masters in North America, and she found me. You know what I mean? And she said, well, here's your math and your music guy. And so we've been working for years on what these numbers are about, and it's really, really, really deep.
And they're all on the keypad, right? It's like the whole solfeggio is on the keypad, up and down, right?
Yeah, and I joked around. My paper on that was called the Keypad Codex.
Cool. Okay, so I got a question for you. What is your number? I mean, it would be your name, right? You use your name first. You could use that.
I've got Randolph. And then numerology, I've got Wesley for my middle name. I have my birth name, which was Hicks, but I got from my stepfather, Master. So I got a choice there. And when I was born, I was a junior. So I got the JR at the end. And I was named after my father, Randolph Wesley Hicks Jr. So I got all those different combinations of numbers to play with. You see?
So you can also use your birth date. So there's the birth date, and then there's your name. Those are kind of the 2 ways you can
and I was born at 4:17 a.m., which is one of the solfeggio numbers.
Oh, I was born at 4:32 a.m.
Of course, right.
I was. It's on my birth certificate.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Isn't it fun? Yeah, it's just totally cool. Of course, it had to be, right? Well, I've been having fun for 30 years working with you, David, and that stuff, and the students we've had and everything. It's like, what a blast. Thank you so much for inviting me to play here. And I hope that everybody has a good time with our dialogue,
Cool. Well, thank you so much for all the service, just incredible service to humanity that you're just
I'm in service.
Yeah.
So much it kept me awake last night getting ready for today, thinking about all the things I'm not going to have time to say. I'm going to deal with it. You can imagine. You see my notes of the things I would potentially cover. I always have that for my classes, and I go, okay, it's going to take me years to get through this sheet, and and I had the nerve to think that I would get through this today.
Well, send it to us in your dreams, okay?
Yeah, it's available, because once I do this work, it's out in the unified field. It's there. I mean, you could tune into it if you could tap into that. Akashic Records, right? That's some good record company, the Akashic Record Company.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to play the closing video now. So,
well, bless everybody. It's more and more. And stay tuned and tune into all, because we go into all this stuff in our Globe classes and deep. So I've never run out of material.
Cool. All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
See ya.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Visit newearth1.com.